Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Patty Brennan Show. Whether you have $20 or $20 million, this show is for those of you who want to protect, grow, and use your assets to live your very best lives. Joining me today, again, is the professor, Eric Furman. Eric and I are going to be talking about a wonderful topic. It's Medicare and the do's and don'ts during the open enrollment periods, as well as the other enrollment periods that are relevant to Medicare and some of the different coverages it provides. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thank you, Patty. Good to be here again. And I'm really excited for today's topic. I was having trouble sleeping last night, so I've had to double my caffeine intake to be ready to go for this one.
This is like the most exciting topic, isn't it? I mean, I'm sure all of you who are listening and watching today are just like at the edge of your seats, right? We're going to make this fun, enlightening. There's a reason why you're tuning in right now.
Well, I like to think from the listener's perspective. I always like to try and put myself in their shoes. I like to believe it's because the Patty Brennan Show is the most electrifying podcast in the financial industry. But I think, under the surface, what's really important, and I hope what people keep tuning in for is, that it's educational, it's content rich, and more importantly, the topics are timely, that they're germane to the present situation. And we're looking at Medicare open enrollment, which starts in 2 days, and that's what we're here to talk about today.
Absolutely. And most importantly, we're going to end the show with key considerations, action items, things to consider so that it's also really practical.
Yep, absolutely. And keep your ears tuned in because you'll have a little notification when the key consideration comes in to really reinforce the topic.
Absolutely.
All
Okay,
right.
So let's start from the very beginning, Eric, because I think it's really important that everybody kind of sets themselves up properly as it relates to getting the best coverage they can for the least amount of money. So let's talk about the initial enrollment process.
Yep, absolutely. So I think you brought up a good topic. So spoiler alert, we're talking about a government program, so it's complicated.
Yes.
Right? So there's a lot of things you have to navigate when it comes to open enrollment. And as you point out, there's many different enrollment periods, and we really want to kind of highlight all of those today, not just the open enrollment period.
I find this is the most misunderstood area during open enrollment. People think, oh, I can change anything. And the answer is no, you can't.
Yeah, well, you can make some really critical mistakes if you're not careful or working with somebody to provide proper guidance. So, I think the big thing is that really today the open enrollment is applying to people that are already on original Medicare or Medicare Advantage. That's what the open enrollment period that we're about to enter is for. And really each year Medicare publishes information, data, and statistics on these plans that are provided to participants. And then open enrollment is really that opportunity to go through review coverages, review changes, review costs, and then be able to make a change if there's a better option that fits your needs.
Right, because you may have selected a coverage or a company or what have you, and they may be taking away some of the coverage that you actually need. So you got to go back to square one and say, okay, what's plan B?
Yeah, exactly right. So, maybe a good segue here is to start and say, well, when can you initially enroll?
Right.
So there's that initial enrollment period that applies when you're, approaching age 65. So, maybe that's a good place to start.
Yeah, let's do that because, boy, if you don't do that right, boy, it could be an expensive mistake. So let's talk about when can people start to enroll for Medicare?
So basically age 65, that's the critical number. So basically when you're within 3 months of your 65th birthday, the month of your birthday, and 3 months after, that's a 7-month initial enrollment period when you can enroll in what's called original Medicare. So this is the Part A hospitalization, Part B, which is the medical insurance, and then you can get a Medigap policy and so forth.
Okay, so let's really, really simplify this, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
Part A, hospitalization.
Yep.
Part B, basically anything but hospitalization.
Right. Seeing the doctor. Right?
Seeing the
Test.
doctor.
Right.
Think about it as inpatient, outpatient. Okay, that's A versus B. Now, inpatient, understand that it only covers 60 days. Okay? Part B, outpatient, again, there's different levels of coverages, et cetera. So that's really important to distinguish. Now, you don't have to get what is called a Medigap policy, but this is the time also to be looking at that kind of coverage, as well as Part D, which is prescription drug coverage.
Exactly right. So the thing that you have to consider is when you're getting to 65, some people might not be working and retired, at which case you want to transition to Medicare. But there's many people that may be working or they have coverage through a spouse who is working. So there's a critical distinction there to determine whether or not you should sign up, because that can really make a difference. So, the distinction for Medicare's purposes is how many employees work for, the employer. So if you work for an employer with more than 20 employees, then the group plan is the primary payer, Medicare is secondary. So in that instance, you don't have to sign up for Medicare at 65 because you have coverage through the group plan and the group plan is the primary payer. But if you're working for a very small employer, and most of employment in America is through small business where there's less than 20 employees, then in that case, Medicare has to be the primary payer and the group is secondary. So if you're in a situation like that, you need to sign up for Medicare Part A and B, because if you don't, then you won't be able to get in under what's called a special enrollment period, where you are exempt from these late enrollment penalties. So it's really critical to get in that 7-month window.
And it's a really important time to evaluate, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? I'll sign up for Medicare and, okay, I've got the group coverage, but Medicare is pretty darn good too. So I think there's a lot to consider and really understand in terms of what's the penalty if you don't sign up for Medicare. That to me is really the issue here.
Yeah, so you're right. So if you already have coverage and there's more than 20 employees, you don't have to sign up. You can get in under, you have what's called credible coverage. So it's a special kind of exemption where you can get in under a special enrollment period eventually when you retire or lose the employer coverage. But the question is, should you sign up anyway? Is there any downside? So usually signing up for Part A really doesn't have a downside. There's no premium to it. The only consideration there is if you're participating in a healthcare savings account. Because you can't have Part A in a healthcare savings account because there's a penalty. There's basically a 6-month look back.
Okay, so let's take a step back. An HSA is an account that is established for if you choose a high deductible savings plan. So you choose the high deductible savings plan, and then you have the HSA, which is really, it's one of those, free lunches that probably will go away at some point, but it's a really good deal in the right set of circumstances. This is not one of them. Okay, once you hit 65, you really do want to turn that off because the penalties of keeping it are significant. To me, I think about this whole issue and I think about insurability, because if you don't sign up and get the proper, holistic, all around coverage, you may not be able to get the kind of coverage you want without proof of insurability. An insurance company can say, hey, you know what, you had your opportunity when you were 60 within that 7-month period of time, but you're not looking so healthy anymore. So we're going to deny providing coverage for you. And that to me is a huge risk.
Right. Yeah. So again, this would go, I guess, beyond when there's employer coverage. But talking about what's called the guaranteed issued rights with your Medicare supplement or Medigap policy, which I think that that will tie into kind of the special enrollment considerations and so forth with some of these other things. But the initial enrollment, I think the big thing to tie it together is it's a 7-month period of time where you can sign up. And again, you want to do that unless there is existing group coverage. And again, the number of employees in that group plan really, or the number of employees in the employer really dictates whether you sign up or not.
I think the other thing that we need to consider is if someone is no longer working for their employer. Let's say that they're, 64 and 6 months, and they are no longer working for their employer, and they decide to go on COBRA. Rightfully so. That's the right choice. COBRA lasts for 18 months. However, that 7-month period and the exclusions, if you will, are based on when the work stopped, not when COBRA ends.
Right.
Which is really, really key.
Yep, exactly right. So that's a careful consideration too, because a lot of people would think, well, I have COBRA and then I'll just switch when it's over. The work stoppage date is the real key date there that determines when the clock essentially starts ticking in terms of your ability to enroll.
And let's think about the example where somebody has a high deductible plan, they've been doing the HSA, they can't do the HSA anymore. Is that really that bad when we consider what the deductibles are, right?
Yeah, I guess that's the question. It depends on what's happening if it's a Medicare approved expense. But I guess in theory, if you're in a high deductible plan, you have to spend a lot of money out of pocket before the plan pays. Well, when you sign up for Part A, so in an instance of hospitalization, because that's what
Right.
Part A is covering. So, let's say you have some kind of surgery, the Part A deductible is much less. It's only, it's less than $1,500 a year. So in essence, signing up for Part A, you have an event, you really only have to meet, and again, you have to check the circumstance, but potentially just the Part A deductible before Medicare would step in and pay. So,
Beautiful.
there's not again, there's no premium, and you might have a lot less out of pocket by signing up for Part A, even if you could delay it.
That works for me.
Yep.
All right, good deal. All right, open enrollment. Here we are.
Yep.
It's open enrollment period. What can people do during this period of time? Let's frame it in terms of the dates. It starts October 15th and goes to December 7th.
Yep. Mark it on our calendar every year at Key Financial, right? What are the big
Absolutely.
dates? Open enrollment, Patty's birthday, right? That's in there. We make sure
Wrong.
that's on the calendar,
No.
right?
I don't want anybody paying attention to my birthday anymore. No.
Right, exactly. So, but I think the key thing for the listeners to understand is that this is for people that have a Medicare Advantage plan or are on original Medicare. This is not when you're first eligible, right? So you've already got care. But this is the period where really there is the most flexibility to make changes. So if you're on original Medicare, you can switch into a Medicare Advantage plan, which is called Part C. If you're on Medical Advantage plan, you can go to original Medicare.
Right.
You can go from a Medicare Advantage plan to another Medicare Advantage plan. Prescription drug coverage is big here. This is where you can move from a Medicare Advantage plan with no prescription drug coverage to one that offers coverage. You can go from a plan that does have coverage to one that doesn't. I'm not sure why you would be compelled to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You can also join a Medicare drug plan, and you can switch between drug plans. So the drug plans are referring to Part D, right? So this is where you can go back and forth. So again, you're kind of switching the main medical coverage and also the ability to switch the prescription drug coverage as well.
It's really important to develop a relationship with somebody who is really plugged into this area, because either you do this or you don't, because every year these companies will change what they're going to cover. You might be on a statin, for example, and they may have covered it for the last 5 years, and all of a sudden they decide, well, they're not going to cover that particular statin. You'd have to go to that one, and your doctor doesn't really want you on that other one. So, okay, you go to a different company that will provide and cover the meds that you're actually on. So this is an area where it really helps to develop a relationship with someone who knows you and is willing to do that legwork to figure out what's going to be the best coverage for you.
I have to tell you, I feel like we had a moment there. I think we literally got into ICU nurse Patty.
Oh, jeez.
And you just came right out. We got the ICU nurse. That was great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
Talk about statins and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know what? As long as we don't start talking about VTAC and VFib, we're good, Eric. We're really good.
Well, you have to do that podcast solo because
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
I'll just be a listener on that one.
All right, good deal.
But I think what's important to understand too is that you've got a lot of flexibility to change. You can actually change your mind multiple times within this enrollment period. But the one thing you can't do is switch the Medigap policy, or also known as Medicare supplement policies. You can't make changes there. So when you're on original Medicare, you have Part A, Part B, and then you have to have a supplemental. You can't make changes to the supplemental. That's very, very rigid. So I think that's important to understand.
The Medigap policies are those policies, just to kind of make sure everybody understands. It's those policies that go by the letters. They go from A to N, and the coverage is different depending on the letter. This is heavily regulated, by the way, so it is important for you to know that there is a net under there, and it is really important. This, again, is where the initial enrollment period comes in. You really want to make sure that you're going to have the coverage that you might want and need. The cost is going to, the cost is the cost. It's all part of this whole healthcare issue.
Yeah, and I think, the other important thing for people out there to recognize is if you're happy with your current coverage, just don't do anything.
Right.
Just keep it the same. Everything will become effective January 1st. But if you are going to switch because there's a more compelling plan, better pricing, there's no medical underwriting to switch plans. So it doesn't matter what the health history is. You can go from one plan to the other. and so forth. And depending on that distinction, do you go from original Medicare to Medicare Advantage? Well, no problem. You basically enroll in Medicare Advantage. That will drop
I
you
was
out
just
of
going to say
original
there
Medicare.
is a distinction there, right?
Yeah, so you got to be careful. So the real consideration is, if you're Medicare Advantage and going back to original Medicare. So part of the issue here, that you can expand upon is that, well, if you're going from Medicare Advantage to original Medicare, you've got to get that supplemental plan.
Right.
And there's very kind of narrow criteria for what's called guaranteed issued rights, meaning can you get into the plan without any kind of underwriting or where the company can deny you or charge you a higher premium.
Okay, so let's step back for a sec. We talked about Part A, Part B. Now we're talking about this Advantage stuff. Medicare Advantage is considered Part C. All it is, folks, is it's a bundle of all of the different coverages. Medicare Advantage tends to be lower cost, lower premiums. It looks really good when you look at the different things that it will cover that are not covered under Medicare A or B, and even some of the Medigap policies. So it's a very attractive alternative, and it may be for the rest of your life. You've just got to really be careful because once you have it, it might be difficult to go back to original Medicare. And we have had situations here at Key Financial where the Part C Medicare Advantage coverage it was not nearly as comprehensive. They were having much more difficulty getting things covered. They wanted to go on standard Medicare, which is heavily regulated, as well as the Medigap policies, and they could not. Very important, because they had health issues, and there wasn't an insurance company in the world that was going to insure them for the Medigap policy. So there was a huge exposure, meaning over 60 days in a hospital, it was all on them if they moved back.
Right. So I think, anyone listening might, after hearing that, because you hear these horror stories, they would have a natural kind of apprehension of going away from Medicare, original Medicare to Medicare Advantage. But there's something in Medicare Advantage called trial rights.
Good
right?
point.
Yes.
Very good point.
So, let me ask you, if you're a consumer,
Yeah.
do you like when you get to try something?
I love it.
Right? You're not committed.
Yeah,
you can give it back.
It's the puppy dog clothes, Eric. You take the puppy home, you fall in love with it, you're not giving that puppy back, right?
Right. Well, it's just like, cars, right? You get to now drive cars to see if
Yeah.
you like it. You can bring it back,
Wouldn't that
and
be
so
nice
forth.
to be able to drive a car for 12 months, right?
Yep.
And then give it back if you don't like it.
Well, here you go. That's what Medicare Advantage trial rights are all about. So
Okay.
if you enroll, so during that initial enrollment period, if you get into Medicare Advantage first and you don't opt into original Medicare, you can switch back to original Medicare and get into a Medigap policy where there's guaranteed issue if it happens within the first 12 months. Also, if you've never been in Medicare Advantage and you say, I want to give it a try, if it's your first time in Medicare Advantage, again, you have those guaranteed trial rights, where as long as within the first year of joining, you have that, I think you phrased this beautifully. I don't want to steal your thunder here, but I think
Go
you
for
said
it.
mulligan,
Yep.
right, to kind of go back and still have those protections in place. These protections are not there if you're someone that is just terribly indecisive and you just keep going back
switching
and forth.
plans.
You only have that preserved one time for the first 12 months, and that's it. But you do get that trial period, and we're consumers in America. We love trying stuff for free.
You know what,
It isn't
Eric?
like-
I love this is one of many things I love about you, because here we're talking about this very arcane type of subject, and you just provide a balanced approach. Don't be afraid. Don't be freaked out about these, the insurability issue, because you do have this opportunity, and it still might be the right coverage for you.
Yeah, and I think the other part too, which maybe we haven't properly explained, is a lot of people may not know about Medicare Advantage. What's the difference with
Right.
traditional Medicare? The way I have always understood it and read about it, basically it's kind of like your employer coverage. It's a one-stop shop that really has everything together, but the limitation there is you're working with an insurance company, you're within a network in terms of how your care is provided, where Medicare is kind of ubiquitous. It's accepted across the country, no matter, you can basically go anywhere, but just important distinction there.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, so Have we covered everything that we need to in open enrollment?
I think we're good there. The key consideration,
Oh,
right?
there you go.
Yep,
Ding,
there
ding,
we
ding.
go.
All
Yep.
right.
So bringing that back in. The big thing is that's where the most flexibility is for people to update and make changes. But it's not the only run. There's there's the Medicare Advantage open enrollment that starts January 1 through March 31st. So it's kind of a second bite at the apple, if you will, if you decide you want to make changes.
Okay, so for anybody who's listening to this and you're driving, please don't worry. You do not have to be writing this stuff down because we've provided all of this information in a white paper. So you'll have it right on our website. So, because we're going to be talking about actually 5 different periods and they're all really important. And we'll have the key considerations in the white paper. So you can just go to our website at keyfinancialinc.com, print that thing out, and you have it right laid out in front of you.
Yep,
So
exactly. And when you log in, you'll see Patty's angelic picture on the front, so you know you're in the right place.
Oh
So no
boy,
worries.
oh boy.
Yep.
I'm going to put your mug up there. That's what we should do. We should just rotate it because this is really a lot more than Patty Brennan, that's for sure.
Yeah, you'll have to bury it somewhere in the website, right?
Yeah.
Who knows? So, but the Medicare Advantage, that's really where if you're on Medicare Advantage, you can then again switch to another Medicare Advantage plan. And you can also drop your Medicare Advantage and return to original Medicare. Now, the distinction here is you can only do it once in that period from January 1 to March 31st. You don't get multiple. You can't change your mind one election and it's done. But again, Medicare Advantage to Medicare Advantage or Medicare Advantage to original Medicare, what you can't do, unlike open enrollment, is go from original Medicare to Medicare Advantage.
Okay.
That's really the big thing there that you can't do. So it's much more limited, in scope.
So you can't change drug coverages. You can't do, a lot of the things that we're able to do right now. Right?
Yeah, there's a couple other can't do's, but yes, you're right. If you're in original Medicare, you can't switch your prescription drug plan, and so forth. So
Okay.
again, a couple considerations there.
Very good.
And then there's another one. These dates are overlapping, but then there's the Medicare general enrollment period. So, I hope nobody takes offense, but we kind of consider this the procrastinators enrollment period.
Yeah. And it's important because there are those procrastinators out there, or they may not have realized the time limit in terms of when they have to enroll. So for those of you who are listening, if you're not on Medicare and you're like, oh my goodness, I guess I needed to do this, when can you do it? And what are the caveats to that? Because there are some.
Yeah, so that Medicare general enrollment period kind of gives you the second chance if you didn't get enrolled during that 7-month enrollment period. But the downside is okay, you can enroll, but your coverage doesn't start until July 1st. So you're going to be without insurance for a significant period of time. And unless there's some kind of special circumstance, you're probably looking at a late enrollment penalty for, say, your Part B coverage,
Right.
Part D, and so forth.
Right. And we should probably talk about the Part B because that's not free. And
Yeah.
what is important for everybody to know is that the premiums, I think, based on, let's say, $81,000 for joint filers. You're in the $180 per month range per person, but it can quickly rise to $500. Close to $500 per person per month for just Part B, not even including the Medigap policy. So, this is not going to be without its cost. It's important when you do your financial planning to include the cost of these coverages in your retirement projections because they're there. And I would also include a buffer for additional things that may not be covered to the extent that you want them to be. Again, understand that while you may not be on meds today, drugs today, you may be in 2 years or 5 years. So that's another important consideration. And we find that those are the issues that can be cost prohibitive, where people really get smacked. They go to the pharmacy and all of a sudden they're paying a $700 pharmacy bill because they just had to pick up their prescriptions for that month. And that's a real surprise for many people. So really just make sure you understand the rules of the game with the coverage that you're selecting and continue to review it. right?
Yep, absolutely. I think all good points to cover, and especially when you're in retirement, most people then transition to, a more kind of rigid income structure. So, really making sure that you've got affordable coverage. You avoid these self-inflicted wounds of late
Yeah.
enrollment penalties, which are totally avoidable.
Yep. Okay, so what's this thing with this special enrollment period? I really like that part, Eric. That's another period where, again, not so much a mulligan, but, all is not lost if you didn't enroll in Medicare because there are some exceptions to the rules.
Yeah, so special enrollment period. This is where I feel like we really go down the rabbit hole here.
Okay, I'm
because
ready.
You totally can, but just so people know as well, a great reference, and I'll put in a little plug for them, is Medicare.gov. That's where most of this information is coming from. So all this can be found on that website to kind of tell you about these situations. So the special enrollment is one where there's so many kind of unique situations that might apply.
One of them that's very practical.
Yep.
Let's talk about something that happens all the time.
Yeah.
We got people who are moving from New York to Florida, Pennsylvania to, Texas, whatever. California has a lot of people going to Texas, right? So, okay, you're 68 years old, you're on Medicare. What do you do then? Because these coverages are based on the state in which you reside, and in most cases, the county in which you reside. So what do you do then?
Now, yeah, so exactly right. That's one of those special circumstances where if you move to a different service area and that coverage isn't provided, then you have that special enrollment period to make the change. With guaranteed issue rights. It's interesting how they define move. Most of us would think moving from, say, state to state. But there's other things. If you're working in a foreign country and you come back to the United States, if you move into a skilled nursing facility and then come back out, that's another opportunity to change. The other one that's listed there is if you're released from jail, that would be technically a move.
I'm really happy to hear that one.
Yes, if you've been in prison for some period of time, you can do that as well. But also, too, these changes, you can lose coverage because, you left an employer or, again, as we said, COBRA comes to an end. And, again, you got to pay attention to COBRA versus, when your work stoppage is. Or the plan, Medicare can, terminate the plan, sanction the plan.
Yeah.
The plan may not renew. So believe it or not, there's lots of kind of other situations beyond your control that could happen and, put you in a special circumstance.
Which is, again, really important because I just always look at the insurability, that guaranteed issue situation because, these insurance companies, they're getting tough out there.
Yeah.
And they really are getting tough, and they're not going to take any risk that they can avoid. So that's really important, I think, as we relate to this medical insurance and making sure that if something happened, you're not going to bankrupt yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the big thing is making sure you can get coverage.
Yeah.
Is one thing, but the other important consideration here is the timing. So usually, and every situation is different, but usually within 2 to 3 months of this event is when you have to file for the change. So the window there is pretty short.
Oh boy, okay.
Right? You're not getting the 7 months or the 6 months or the 8 months. Right? It's usually 2 to 3 months after that circumstance that you've got to elect for the change.
It's the government, so keep proof that you contacted them. Write down the people, the names, the dates, the time that you called. Try to send emails if you can. It's just a mess out there. So keep the proof because there is a time limit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Eric, so now we've covered the special circumstances, the special enrollment. Now we've saved the best for last.
Oh, boy.
Oh,
All
boy.
right, I can't wait, right?
Yep. Let's
Here
talk
comes
about
dessert.
the 5-star ratings. Okay, what is that all about?
Well, so the 5-star rating. So basically, Medicare goes out and now they collect surveys and pricing data and so forth, and they assign a star rating to Medicare Advantage plans and Medicare prescription drug plans, or Part D. The important point to note is that there's only, 21 5-star Medicare Advantage plans that are out there. So,
and they're not available in every service area, right? So it's not like you have 21 Medicare Advantage plans to choose from where you live.
yeah, so the 5-star enrollment, so it's another kind of unique area of this whole enrollment, dialogue. but it may not even be available to you, as you said, because it's not available in all service areas.
You know, Eric, this is kind of bizarre. It sort of feels like the Rotten Tomatoes when they're rating movies, right? You know, and
Yeah.
you're only going for 80%, you know, you want the best ratings. Why is the government doing this all of a sudden? It feels like, I mean, I just thought about this, so I could be totally off base, but now the government is rating insurance plans. Are they trying to get people to choose Medicare Advantage so they're off of, original Medicare? Are they trying to create an incentive? Say, hey, you got to look at this insurance company over here. They're pretty darn good. Then we don't have to pay for your coverage, and we don't have to cover you if you're in the hospital or you get really sick and you need chemo and all of that. I could be wrong about that, but
I mean, it's a thought-provoking question. I guess the question is, how does Medicare work with, the Medicare Advantage plans? But I want to go back to Rotten Tomatoes. Where do you draw the line? Is it 80% or above you take? Because in my house, my kids go for anything under 20.
Oh,
and that's
boy.
what we watch on our TV.
all right, back to the 5-star plans.
Yeah, so I guess to your point, I mean, I always feel like, these things are done with the intent to inform the consumer. So much regulation and thing is all about improving standards, improving quality, but also making sure you're communicating that in an understandable way, because we're talking about programs that affect tens of millions of people.
Right.
So I would hope that would be the spirit. Perhaps there's some nefarious intent with someone cloaked in a secret room. I don't know. It's a great question.
Because you know what we always talk about, everybody's worried about, is Social Security going to run out? And what many people don't realize is it's not really Social Security that is the issue for the government. It is the cost of Medicare and these entitlement programs.
You did it again.
Oh,
And
here we go.
Here it goes, right?
Yes.
Every time we do this, some kind of new topic comes up for a future podcast. So stay tuned, right? Because who knows?
Absolutely,
Maybe you
yes.
never know what you're going to get here. on the
And
Patty
we're going to
Brennan
talk
Show.
about the new tax law,
Right.
the potential new tax law, because there's a lot of stuff that people listening can and should be thinking about before the end of this year. So that's our next podcast. That's going to be fun.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But I might have to lay in the couch and take 5 before we come back. That's a big topic to get on
cover.
top of, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, all right, Eric. Well, thank you so much. This has been fun, as always, enlightening, hopefully, for everybody listening and watching today. I can't thank you all enough for always tuning in. It's just been amazing. I hope it is fun for you. It is different. We try to take these very dense subjects and hopefully lighten them up a little bit for you and give you really actionable steps. Again, just to refresh your memory, go onto our website. All of this information is on our website in the podcast section. White paper, all of these enrollment periods, what you can do, what you can't do, and some of the landmines that we've talked about today. So thank you so much for taking the time. We love having you here. We love the feedback that you've been giving us. Thank you for sharing the podcast. It's been unbelievable. I hate to use the word, but it's become viral. And Eric, thank you as always. It's just fun. We spend a lot of time in advance of these podcasts thinking about what we want to share. You do so much work on them, and I really am grateful. So thank you.
Highlight of my day, always.
Yes. Okay, so that's it for today's show. Again, go to our website, keyfinancialinc.com. If you have questions, give us a call, send us an email. We are here for you. Thank you so much. I hope you all have a great and healthy day.